Get up to Daf Tzadi Aleph Amid Beis, and we were discussing the Parsha in Bamidbar Tesvav and darshaning the Pasuk, and we had the last drasha was with regard to Elo Shel Aaron, and the question is, when Aaron HaKohen, Kohen Gadol, brought his ayil on Yom Kippur, we needed a pasuk la'ayil to be marbeh that he brings nisachim to accompany his carbon ayil, and we could not derive that from the general requirement of nisachim for moadechem, for all the moadim, because the ayil of Aaron HaKohen comes from his personal bank account, as opposed to the karbanos of the Moadim, which come from the Trumas Alishka of the community. The Gemara then had a question from Olas Yoledes, which also requires Nisachim, even though the Ola comes from her private monies. But the Gemara thought that maybe in the case of the Elo Shel Aaron, which has a Zman Kavua, therefore would not require Nisachim. So we're up to Ola Ayil Lomali, which is about halfway down the Omid on Daf Tzadi Aleph Omid Beis. You'll see a small letter Hey, which refers to the Torah Or, and the Torah Or here, number Hey, quotes the pasuk Ola Ayil Tase Mincha Soles Shnei Esronim Blula B'Shemen Shlishis Ahin. So we're talking about Ola Ayil, the extra word O. Lomali. Why do I need the extra word O? Lerabos es ha-pilgas. So let's explain what a pilgas is. We're talking about a keves that during its first 12 months of life, it's called a keves. So that's Shana Rishona, the first year. Then in the second year, it becomes an ayil. But the halacha is that you don't have to wait until the second year. It's just 1 month and 1 day into the second year, because a month and a day is considered like a full year. So it's an ayil already after call it the 13th month and a day. Now, during that month, past its 12th month or first birthday, it's neither a keves nor an ayil. And that's called a pilgas, miloshen plag, meaning half. It's kind of like in that halfway period of time, that 1 month between a keves and an ayil. And we have to know whether or not such a palgas requires nisachim, and for that we need the extra word o, la'ayil, l'rabos es palgas. Now the Gemara is going to quote a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Bar Pada about the status of a palgas. Hanichal Rabbi Yochanan shita is the Omer Biryahi. The status of a palgas is a separate entity unto itself. You have a keves, then you have a palgas for that month and a day. There's a Rambam Shita that seems to say only that last day it's a palgas. But anyway, and then you have an ayil. So the palgas is neither here nor there. And Rabbi Yochanan made his comment on a Mishnah in Masechta Parah in the first parak. Disnan, we learned in that Mishnah, Hikrivu, they brought a palgas as a carbon, Meviel of Niske Ayel, V'ena Ololo Mizivcho, so that this palgas, Om Rab Yochanan, Oli Ayel Rabos palgas, so that in Rab Yochanan's comment on the Mishnah in Parah, if he was makriv this palgas, then he does not fulfill his obligation. Let's say he took upon himself to bring a keves, or alternatively, he took upon himself to bring an aisle, and instead he brought a palgas. He'll have to replace it because the palgas is neither a keves nor an aisle. With regard to the nesachim, we have a special ribui, says Rabbi Yochanan, ola ayol rabos es apalgos, that the palgos requires the same nesachim as an ayol, which is shlishis ahin, which is the equivalent of 4 logim. Anyway, so that's the shita of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan clearly needs the O as a ribui for palgos to teach you that even though it's an entity unto itself and it's not an ayil, nevertheless it brings the nesachim of the shlishis ahin la'ayil like as if it were an ayil. El bar pada, but bar pada disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan. Ti Omar maisi umasne desfekahu. According to the Shita Bar Pada, a palgas is a suffik keves suffik ayil. The Rabbanu were not able to determine in a definite way whether it's a keves or it's an ayil during that 1 month after the 12-month period following its birth. And therefore, in a case of a suffik, he'll have to bring, according to Bar Pada, the nesachim of an ayil, which is shlishas ahin, which is the equivalent, we said, of 4 logim, rather than the 3 logim of a keves, which is called revius ahin, because he has to be machmir like any suffik. And if indeed the palgas is an ayil, then the 3 logim of a keves would not suffice. And he makes a t'nai. He says the following: I'm going to bring 4 logim, which is a shlishas ahin, and that certainly will cover me for revius ahin on the side that it's a keves, but it'll cover me on the side that it's an ayil for the 4th log. Now, if it turns out it's only klapi shmaya galia that it's actually a keves, then that 4th log will be a nedava, because niske yain could come on their own as a nedava. Like Tosfos has a major problem with this based on other sugyas that indicate that you can only take a nedava to bring nesachim on that amount of yain which would fit into one of the known categories, but 1 log doesn't fit into any category. So, but that's again a problem that has to be addressed. So now the Gemara asks the following question: according to Bar Pada, Itzra Kroller Abuye Sveika. This is a rhetorical question. Do I need a pasuk to teach me what do I do in a case of doubt? In a case of doubt, I always go lechumra, and therefore I'm going to bring a shlishas ahin 4 logim in order to cover the possibility that maybe a palgas is indeed an ayil. So why then do I need a pasuk o, the extra o la ayil? And the Gemara says, "Vaday levar papakash." We don't have an answer to this question. Why did the Torah have to add the word "o"? Now we go on to another pasuk, which you'll see here quoted in the Torah or on the bottom of the page. It says, Kacha ye'aseh, right? This is just a few psukim later after O la'ayil, lashor ha'echad, O la'ayil echad, O l'seh bekvasim o be'izim. And the Gemara asks, L'shar ha'echad ma Talmud lomar? Why did the Torah have to add L'shar ha'echad? L'fisha matzinu shechilek hakos niskei ayil and niskei keves, right? Where the niskei ayil is a shlishas hahin, whereas the niskei keves is only a revius hahin. Is yochel, I might think, nechalek bein niskei par niskei egel. Maybe we should apply the same kind of yardstick when it comes to a par, otherwise called in the Torah shar, and we distinguish between the first year and the second year. The first year it's called an egel, and then in the second year it's called a par. And maybe we should therefore say that the Torah should differentiate between the egel and the par as far as the nesachim are concerned. Talmud lo shar ha'echad. Echad means that the shar is only one type of nesachim, and it doesn't matter whether it's a young shar, which is called an egel, or an older shar, which is called a par. Ola ayil ma Talmud lomar. So this is pasuk vav. Until now, we were focused Oli ayil in pasuk Oli ayil in pasuk vav. Now we're fast forwarding to pasuk yud aleph, I believe. Yeah. And there it says, Kocha yasel ashor ha'echad ola ayil ha'echad. So why do we need ola ayil? It's a repetition of we had earlier in Pasuk Vav. Lefisha matzinu shechilek hakos bein niskei ben shana leniskei ben shnatayim. With regard to a keves, we differentiate between the first year when it's a keves and the second year when it's an ayil. And we go up from Revius Hahin to Shlishis Hahin is Yachol, if I might think, Nechalik ben Niskei ben Shtaim Niskei ben Sholosh, maybe in the case of a Keves. We should have a threefold distinction. We should have a keves in the first year, an ayil in the second year, and maybe there should be a different volume of yayin for the nesachim in the third year. Talmud lomar ola ayil ha'echad. Echad meaning that once it enters into the second year, right after the 13th month, etc., and it's now an ayil, it remains an ayil in that category for the rest of its life, even in the third year. Now we go on in the pasuk. It says, right? We saw it in number hey here in the Torah. Or Ola ayil tasa minchas sol shnei. No, just one second. Oh, in pasuk Yud Aleph it says Kochi yaseh lashor echad ola ayil echad olaseh lakvasim ma Talmud lomar. The Torah had already mentioned in pasuk hey the nesachim of a seh. Lefish mitzvah shechilka ben kivsei kevis lekivsei ayil yachal nechalik ben kivsei kivsa linische rechela. So we're talking about uh, a female sheep, right? So a lamb, I guess you'd call it, right? And in its first year, we say the nesachim are the nesachim of, Revius Hahin that we said before. But what about when it becomes a rechela? Rechela means in its second year, which probably means 13 months plus a day Talmud Lomer Ola Sebekvosim, to teach me that Nesachim remain constant with regard to a female sheep, regardless of the age of the sheep. And then it says in the Pasuk Obeizim, now we're talking about goats. Ma Talmud Lomer again, Lefish Matzina Shachila Kosme Niskei Keves Niskei Ayel is Yochel Nachalik Bei Niskei Gedi Liniskei Sa'ir. So here Rashi explains that there's a difference between a Gedi and a Sa'ir. A Gedi is a young goat, which we call a kid, and a Sa'ir is an older goat, meaning after it enters into its second year. And now we want to equate Izim with Kvasim because they're both called Son, and we should make a distinction in the male goats between the first year and the second year. Talmud Lomer O Ba'izim, to teach you that the Nesachim remain constant for the Izim, regardless of their age, whether young in the first year or older in the second year. So the only case at the end of the day where we're going to make a distinction between the age of young and the age of older in Nesachim is only going to be in the case of male sheep, male kvasim. And the differences between 12 months and 13 months, etc., etc. But with regard to all other goats, then the Nesachim remain the same, which is Revius Halug, which is the Revius is 1/4 of 12 is 3 Lugim, of both Shemen and Yayin, and 1 Isaron of Soles. And the male sheep, after its 13th month, becomes an Ayil, requires 2 Isronos of Soles. And now we say it requires a Shlishis Hahin, which is 4 Lugim of Shemen and Yain. But all other cattle require the Nesachim of 3 Isronos and 6 Lugim. And we're up to Amar of Papa, Badiklon Rav.